Last footprints in the snow. It was deep winter. The moon illuminated the forests, and the frosty air drew frosty patterns on the windows. Clara, a 20-year-old student, was returning from a visit to her aunt in the countryside. Normally, she would only choose to travel through the forest during the day, but she had stayed longer than she had planned, and now she was faced with a chilly and restless night journey home. The forest she had to pass through was famous for its legends. The locals whispered among themselves about mysterious disappearances and strange sounds. Clara did not believe these stories, but as soon as she stepped onto the path leading through the trees, she felt herself shivering, not only from the cold, but also from the silence that reigned around her. The snow crunched under her boots, the only sound in an otherwise still world. After a few meters, she noticed that her own breath was creating a vapor that seemed to linger in the air longer than it should. She looked around, but all she saw was trees shrouded in a blanket of white. Then it came, the faint tinkling of a bell. She stopped, straining her ears. The sound was faint, as if coming from afar, but it was perfectly clear in the silence of the forest. Clara muttered to herself, "It must be some bird or animal." Yet her steps quickened. After a moment, she looked back. The tracks in the snow she had left behind were gone. The path behind her was untouched, as if she had never walked this way. Her pulse quickened. She tried to rationalize it. Perhaps the wind was blowing. Perhaps the snow had settled again. The sound of the bell rang again, closer this time. She stopped. "Is anyone there?" she called into the darkness. Her voice was too faint, swallowed by the thick winter fog. There was silence, but something inside her made her turn. When she looked behind her, she saw a shadow among the trees. A figure. Tall, almost unnaturally thin, wearing something that resembled a long coat, standing still. Clara swallowed and took a step back. The figure did not move. "I'm just tired," she whispered to herself to calm herself. She turned and continued on faster, but the sound of the bell haunted her. It always seemed to be a few steps behind her, no matter how fast she walked. When she looked back again, the figure was gone. Yet she felt as if something was behind her. She arrived at a clearing she had never seen before. In the center stood a small cross, half covered in snow. She walked over to it to read the faded inscription. Marie, 1897. Rest in peace. Clara wasn't sure why the sight of the name struck her. She felt it sounded familiar, as if she had heard it in a story long ago. Suddenly she felt the atmosphere change. The forest seemed quieter, darker, and the chill penetrated deeper into her bones. The bell tinkled right behind her. When she turned, the figure was there, closer this time. Tall and slender, her face shrouded in shadow, her eyes two black voids. Clara felt an incredible cold, as if all the warm air had drained from her body. She tried to scream, but her voice failed her. The figure raised its hand and rang the bell. The sound was deafening, as if it were coming from all directions. Clara took a step back and bumped into the cross. At that moment, she noticed that the figure wasn't moving, just standing there, watching her. Clara ran. She ran until her heart was pounding so hard she felt like it was going to jump. The clearing disappeared behind her, but she could still hear the bell. When she stopped, the forest looked different. The trees were closer together. The path disappeared. She was lost. She started to call for help, but her voice faded into the fog. The bell now rang continuously, as if it were coming from all directions. Then she noticed her footprints. They were all around her, overlapping, crossing, as if she had been walking in circles for hours. When she turned, there she was again. The figure. This time she was so close that she could see something black dripping from the bell, like ink that absorbed the light. The cross she had seen in the clearing now appeared right in front of her. Clara fell to her knees. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The figure approached her, picked up the bell, and rang it. When she was found in the morning, she was sitting in a clearing, her eyes staring into space. Beside her lay a yellowed newspaper clipping. It had a photograph of a young girl, and the caption, Marie, 1897, unsolved disappearance in the winter forest. Clara never woke up. And the ringing in the forest? It is said that it still rings occasionally when winter approaches.